I'm making a video essay on every Harry Potter film, and to be honest, it took a long time for me since I was able to do the Chamber of Secrets movie, as I had done the same thing as making the other ones. For me, as a kid, this movie used to be my favorite, and I've always watched it multiple times. But even though I'm grown up, I still have so much respect for this film, as it perfectly has an iconic and easily one of the best sequels from a technical film franchises. Many people seem to not like this movie, mainly because they have so many problems with it right then and there. But for this video, I'm only discussing why this film did make such a great sequel. Some of you might like this film, but as I said, this is my only view of this movie, and many of you will disagree with me on that, but let's keep this video positive, as well as the comment section as well. Now let's get started. Just like how I mentioned in my Goblet of Fire video essay, I still have problems with it. When I was a kid when I first watched it, I've always thought that Hermione fixing Harry's glasses was a really nice touch, but when I finally grew up, I finally realized that she was using magic outside of school, which kind of bothered me to say the least. But the other thing that really bothered me was the fact that Lucius Malfoy was about to use the killing curse on Harry, which is just absolutely ridiculous and was not in the book. I feel like I didn't mention this, but there were some mistakes in this movie that pretty much baffled everyone, which is the cameraman being on site. I don't know if it's really me, but I don't really mind that, but it's just kind of surprising that he had to make an appearance for this film.
Bruh.
As I said, this movie used to be my favorite when I was a kid, and I've always watched it multiple times, even like thousands. But for this one, I'm here to discuss why this movie was able to make a talented sequel, as many others would like this movie pretty much equally, as well as the other films in the franchises. This film was directed right after the first movie, The Philosopher's Stone, which obviously was directed by Chris Columbus, who directed both of these films. And to be honest, I think Chris Columbus did an amazing job with the sequel, especially with adapting with the book to the movie as well, especially when it came right after the first movie as well. But for the Chamber of Secrets, it's pretty much the same thing. It's lighthearted, just like the first movie was, but even so, it's pretty much vastly different to the other future Harry Potter films in the series. The other films are more darker than the previous two. We had different locations of Hogwarts that changed. And even so, we even see a different Dumbledore, which is Richard Harris, being replaced by Michael Gambon due to Harris's unfortunate passing. And we even started to see a different side of Cornelius Oswald Fudge, when in the Chamber of Secrets, we see him as pretty much like a simple character as we start to like him. But then later on, he goes into a different side of that character as we now despise him. With that being said, however, let's discuss what makes The Chamber of Secrets a really great sequel for many people that will eventually like, even when people seem to not like it. As I said, this movie was released right after The Sorcerer's Stone was released, but for the difference is, The Sorcerer's Stone was released in 2001, and the second film was released in 2002. And both films are lighthearted, but then what people seem to realize that sort of surprised them was how much that the movie involves so much scary stuff in these things. And it's not like it's a bad thing for these things, because let's face it, both the first and the second are lighthearted films and is pretty much enjoyable for kids. But even so, they do tend to have a few jump scares, but not necessarily like a horror movie-ish. But yes, there might be some, and it might feel like a horror film-ish. Until then, it then goes back to what people seem to realize, that this film was pretty much like the opposite, pretty much like a funny film. And when looking at this film, there might be some things that might be funny, which pretty much goes to a struggle between the lighthearted stuff, even the dark stuff, specifically the Half-Blood Prince. But many people say that the Half-Blood Prince movie is the funniest. But when you look at the second and the sixth film, both of them are funny movies, but in reality, the Half-Blood Prince book is one of the darkest thus far. And if you take a look at the Chamber of Secrets, you'll know that this is 100% a PG movie. And even so, they still have lighthearted stuff in that, and they involve with such great comedy in this, which is not a bad thing. And one of my favorite parts of this film being lighthearted was the way of seeing the Christmas scenes being involved, especially when it comes to giving the feeling that you're actually at Hogwarts. Because whether you come by reading the book or watching the movie on screen, it actually makes you feel like that you actually are in the magical world. But in doubt, this film does have a great lighthearted stuff. One of the things that made this film pretty much a really amazing sequel for me was the way they had to repeat the same stuff from the previous movie, but had to make it a different approach for this one. We had the exact same cast and the same director, but we also get new faces that we never seen before. For this one, The Chamber of Secrets is more of a mystery thriller. Learn about some mystery stuff that's been going on. And throughout, the book also dealt with some mystery aspects as we learned through the story. The questions being, who is the heir of Slytherin? Who is slowly petrifying the students? And the main question is being, who opened the Chamber of Secrets? Because when adapting the book to a movie, it pretty much is hard to come up with these things, but they had to keep it simple and just that. Some other things too that they involved is matching the same things like in the first movie, whether it could be Hagrid taking Harry diagonally for the second time, seeing another sunny Quidditch match, Harry facing Voldemort again, and so on and so forth. Speaking of Voldemort, I feel like I had to talk about Tom Riddle in this movie. I think Christian Coulson, who plays Tom Riddle, is easily one of my favorites. I think he nailed his character very well. Now let's talk about the ending of this film. Many of you will agree or disagree with me. Many Harry Potter fans said that the movie's ending was pretty corny and was a terrible ending. But no, I'm here to discuss the ending of this movie. This was Chris Columbus's second film he directed, and it's pretty much the last film that he directed. Hagrid was released from Azkaban, and all the kids and the staff are very happy to see him that he's back. And we see a powerful line that was not in the book. It really represents how much people care about Hagrid, especially Harry.
There's no Hogwarts without you, Hagrid.
With this line, it pretty much relates to Robbie Coltrane's unfortunate passing as well. Because if there is no Hagrid in real life, we would never have Robbie Coltrane. So, with this line, rest in peace very hardly in your spirit, Robbie Coltrane. We will always be forever in our hearts, especially Hagrid himself. In conclusion, many people seem to really not like this movie as much as often. But for me, I still always loved that movie, especially when I've always think that this movie used to be my favorite, even when I still watch it many times. Although, The Prisoner of Azkaban will always be my favorite movie out of the 8 thus far. But even still, The Chamber of Secrets is perfectly one of the best sequels, but not over 100%, but I still respect it equally, even when people disliked it. I still see the light for this movie, and it will always have a nice view from my point of view, but it will still always have a nice place for many people's hearts, including me.